Wasn't expecting that, but thank you very much. Well, welcome to the Kenworthy Performing Arts Center for our live recording and Q&A of Sons of Patriarchy. Thank you everyone also for making this a sellout. We sold out in 2 days. We want to make a note on that. 2 days. I also want to thank the fundraisers. We put out a little poll, but a fund on Donor Box about a week and a half ago, and you guys showed up in 4 hours. So we pulled all the funds we needed to fly her out, to fly me out, to have our accommodations paid for our food. So you guys did that, Moscow. I also want to say hello to our streamers on YouTube. I have no idea. I can't see anything on YouTube. I can't see the comments. I can't see how many people. But we want to thank those who are on YouTube. We want to thank, if there's anybody at Cafe Artista for Overflow, we want to thank them as well. I have no idea if you know about Sons of Patriarchy. I'm assuming if you're here, you know about us or you heard about us. But I just want to give a little spiel about us. If you haven't heard of us before, or your friend invited you and you're trying to figure out who are these people, why are they in my city, what are they talking about? So I started this podcast about 9 months ago. There's a lot of people behind this who I will be thanking, who will be scared of me thanking them, but I will be thanking them. But we started this 9 months ago because of a guy you know in this town. I won't even say his name, but a guy you know. We started because I'm trained theologically. I'm a Christian. I know not everybody here is a Christian, and that's why I partner with atheists, agnostics, people across the faith board, anybody. Because if you're a human, you want him gone. And She's going to hate that I'm doing this, but I want to thank Sarah Bader. It's the running joke is what happens when you put a Christian and an atheist in a bar. You get Sons of Patriarchy. So if you meet her, please say thank you. This wouldn't be possible without her work. She's the heartbeat of this. So thank her for this. And also a note too, this goes until 4:45, 4:50-ish. We started a little bit later, just we have a big crowd. This is actually bigger than I thought it would be. They opened more seats to this because of the popularity of this. And I don't know who's at Cafe Artista, but at 5 o'clock is our Q&A. And so you'll see a microphone, a hot mic right here. So 5 o'clock is our Q&A. We'll have a little bit of intermission after the interview, the live recording, and the Q&A will follow after that. We're not moderating the questions, so I have no idea what's coming up, which is bad, maybe, I don't know. But we'll do our best to answer it. If we can't answer, we'll try to point you towards resources. We'll try to give you some information, or I'll simply say, I don't know. And then maybe somebody else knows. I'll introduce myself since I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Peter Baum, the producer of Sons of Patriarchy. Long blood, sweat, and tears. We actually had the entirety of season 1 recorded before we even started season 1. And there was so much outcry for more that we figured, I guess we're doing more. I guess we're continuing this. And then this is Sarah Stankorb. She's the bestselling author. She's the best-selling author of Disobedient Women, which is the book that's being signed after the Q&A at Cafe Artista for the meet and greets and also the signing. I'm assuming we have them. If we don't, we have other things available for her to sign that we can put in the books as well. We didn't expect this many people, so you put us in a bind, a good bind, but you put us in a bind. We also have her shirts to sell too. I actually have mine. I won't unbutton it because I have a mic on here. But I actually have my Disobedient Woman shirt under my dress shirt. And so we're selling those. Please buy all of them. Because we don't want her going back home with more of those. And half the proceeds for Disobedient Woman, the t-shirt, is going to Outreach Idaho, which is going to be, we've talked about this a bit on the podcast. It's for survivors. We're trying to help survivors out. We're trying to give them resources they need, legal, counseling, moving, whatever it is. We want to figure out some way we can help them. That's why we exist as a podcast to prop that stuff up. If you haven't got your shirt yet, please do get your shirt. And I was told, please wear them. Wear them all across. All right. So let's get into it. So Sarah, after Disobedient Women, what's next?
So I have been working on the book, second book, that I initially got the idea for about 10 years ago. As I started to notice other women in my age, millennial. At that point, we were young women were leaving the church, and I thought, what's happening to me? What's happening with other women? Fortunately for me, no one took that book at that time, because now Gen Z women are flying out the door, and we're seeing trends where women across generations are leaving. So I've spent, really 10 years asking women what's going on in the church, and many telling me why they left. But this last year has been a deep, deep dive, and we'll get into a lot of what I've learned. But I think one of the big takeaways that I keep hearing is when you're in the church, some churches, not all, but the popular sense of what it means to be a Christian in this nation now, you're damned if you stay, and you're damned if you leave. So you might as well go. And the title of the next book is Damned If He Does. And it's not coming out for a year or so. I have not talked about this book except to my husband and my kids who have no interest whatsoever. So I am putting a lot of faith in Peter and in all of you not to like throw tomatoes at me. So that's what I'm here to talk about at first, and then we'll do the Q&A where you're gonna ask us what you ask.
Yeah. So based off Disobedient Woman, is this, I don't know if people were thinking this question, I thought this question, is your upcoming book like the sequel of Disobedient Woman? Okay, now we have this, what do we do now? So so you wrote Disobedient Woman, what's not just a goal, but does it relate to Disobedient Woman, or is it something entirely different?
So in some ways, I'd say it's talking women for sure about like the reasons women are kind of giving up. Abuse is for sure one of the main reasons. And hearing about abuse within the church and failures within the church to deal with abuse. So in that way, yes. But it is not the only reason. And I think something important to think about, people don't change the core of who they are. They don't change a crucial part of their identity lightly, and they don't do it for one reason. There's usually something that pulls at you and makes you go, ugh, am I okay here? And then there's something else, and then there's something else, and then there's this tipping point. So there are some ways in which the demonstrations of hypocrisy, the having to cry out about abuse is part of it, but there's a huge portion of this country that has seen the way churches have treated LGBTQ people. They don't want to be a part of it. There are some people who maybe never believed, and now because more folks are leaving, they feel more comfortable saying, you know what, I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic.
Yeah. So one of the questions I had, and this relates to your work, the women leaving the church, is it because they're losing the faith? Is it because they are, if this is part of your identity, if this is, I guess, who you think you are in some way, and that starts getting shattered, when they're leaving the church, are they leaving the faith, or are they leaving the church?
That's a really good question. So I hope to do a spreadsheet and kind of advise people to talk to. I haven't done that yet. So spitballing, but of the group of women I've interviewed, I'd say a third are agnostic and atheist, and yet they've changed what they believe. I'd say another, maybe third, have expanded what they believe. So they've taken maybe some pieces of their old faith and they've added in astrology, or they've added in crystals, or I've interviewed one woman who, and it's a rather long, traumatic story, but she left the church and had lots of trauma around this, and got involved in a sort of like healing modality with astral projection. So she kind of feels like she leaves her body and talks to other higher beings. And the higher being that helped her through was Jesus. Not Jesus from the church, Jesus astrally projecting from Jesus. And she kind of became one with that version of Jesus. And it helped her feel better. So there's that group. And then the other group, and these numbers are not adding up. So whenever I said a third, well, make them half. The other half are people who left because of their faith. Because they were taught there is this figure named Jesus. And he cared about the poor, and he cared about women, and he flipped the tables of the Pharisees. He was raucous and a rebel, and he would not tolerate the way their churches are treating people. So they cannot call themselves Christians anymore, but they still believe in this figure of Jesus. They consider those stories of Jesus and their conviction and their alignment with that figure of Jesus is why they cannot be in the church. And that to me has really been startling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome to amen if you're a Christian or like, yeah, let's do it. However you want it, amen. Amen. So you told me you liked this question, which was surprised you liked this question. So we practiced this sort of twice before to make sure that I wasn't blithering and she was focused. You'd be surprised how hard this is to do sometimes.
My book is in pieces on my office.
Literally, I saw her office. It's in pieces on her office.
So it's kind of here, it's kind of there.
Yep. But you like this question, so I'll ask this for those who are listening, both online, Overflow, and then here as well. Is this book, Women Leaving the Church, is it like a projection? Like, I left the church, I, Sarah Stankorb, left the church. And now I'm trying to provide an apology, not like, sorry for doing this, but the reasons why I left the church. And so here's the book. Like, this is the reason, world, why I left the church. Is that why you wrote the book?
So, no. I'm
Don't shoot me, shoot the messenger.
You're the messenger. No one shoot anyone.
I shouldn't say that.
Okay, so a little history about me. It was mainly I'm Protestant, and a couple of things made me question my faith. Some of it was I had a best friend who took me to an evangelical Bible study. Some of this is in the book. And they damn gay people, and they really didn't have a high opinion of women, and said women shouldn't be preachers and women shouldn't be in the church. And there was one way of looking at the Bible. And I thought, oh, I must be looking at it wrong. And I went to college and studied the Bible, and it made zero sense to me that you could take it literally. Because there's a history, there's stories from all over the place mashed together. There are two creation stories, the first two books of the Bible. How do you take that literally? So I thought, well, I'm an atheist. And I was so hurt. And I was mad at what I used to believe was God. And so I had a painful breakup with the church. This is before people were on the internet talking about deconstructing. So I didn't know, I just thought it was me, and it was pretty lonely. And then over time, and honestly through reporting and talking to people with a vast array of beliefs, I settled down. And for me, agnosticism is just an honest intellectual position. I don't know. I don't know if there's a God. That'd be nice. Or maybe it'd be complicated. I don't know. So that's where I am. Like I described, roughly half these women have attachment of some sort to Jesus. That's not me. Many are into kind of new age activities. I'm going to a pagan festival next weekend, which is different than here. So that's not me as well. And I've also interviewed quite a few Black women who are what they say is decolonizing the Christian faith they inherited. And trying to pull off the form of Christianity that was overlaid atop of the African faiths their ancestors brought over. And so they're practicing hoodoo that their grandma told them a little bit about. And they're trying through that not only to peel off the bad parts of Christianity that justified slavery, but also heal backwards. One book in particular who I interviewed feels like by having an altar where she venerates all worships, just thinks about her ancestors and what they went through, what they survived. she's healing a part of herself that is still dealing with the racism we have in this country. And hopefully in some way that I don't understand, reaching back and healing a part of that story of her grandmother and grandmother, great-great-grandmother and grandmother. And these are not me. Like, this is not my story, but I'm fortunate enough to hear them and see this kind of like wild tapestry of beliefs that women are adopting and flourishing in. And I think that's the difference for many of them, because they were not flourishing before.
So we, again, talked before about this. So with the woman leaving the church, two different but related questions. The first one is, why this book and why now? Like, why this topic and why now? And then secondly, and related to it, is, I know this is a big one, but why? Why are women leaving now as opposed to 100 years ago, as opposed to 50 years ago, as opposed to during World War II or after World War II? So what led this movement outside the church, and why your book now as opposed to when you started writing it 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, you're right. Patriarchy isn't new.
Yeah.
So that's
Shocker.
That's
Yeah.
not a new reaction. Why now is the statistics are actually catching people's attention. So the General Social Survey, I got it, in 1972, 5% of Americans admitted to not being religious. They said, I'm not that religious. 3.6% of women said they're not religious. It was like 6.5% of men. Now, like 28% of Americans say they're not religious. Among women, there was a study from PRRI last year. 36% of Gen Z women said they're not religious. 32% of men. So that's like, this is one of the big conceptual things that's been really itching in my brain for decades. The world over, women are usually more religious than men. They may not be in the pulpit, but they are the ones who keep the fabric of the community going. They flip the pancakes, they may decorate the ends of the pews for holidays, they make sure their kids get baptized, they make sure their kids learn the rituals of the faith. And there are these social theories that when women start leaving at the same rates as men, your society's secularizing, there's a big shift happening. So that opens up all sorts of questions about why now? And I have two big thoughts on that. One is the change since about 1987. When Pat Robertson, I'm going to point at him, not you, but like Pat Robertson.
Sorry.
There. Pat Robertson ran for president, and he realized, I can organize evangelical voters. I can create a voting bloc. And his friends decided, I can create think tanks. And then we can build the Christian right. And around that same period, I saw one study, it was like 1987, 1988, that period. If you asked Americans, do you believe in God? Do you believe in Judgment Day? And, oh shoot, I forgot the other thing. But it's beliefs, Christian core beliefs. 71% of Republicans said yes. 71% of Democrats said yes. Now, same survey today, do you believe in God? 73% of Republicans. Wow, that's an awful lot of work for that amount to change. 55% of Democrats. Something has happened with with the shift to politicize the issues as Christian issues that are on the right, and this is your right, that has pulled people apart. And so there's been this major dip in the mainline, middle of the road churches where people used to sit side by side, people that they disagreed with politically. And now that's just not happening so much. What I've heard over and over is I don't want to associate with that. Like, even if your church is not preaching that women should not vote, even if your church is not in alignment with these far-right ideas, that distaste has ruined church for a lot of people who are in the middle of the left. So that's it. The other big thing is the internet. It used to be if you had a kooky pastor, and that kooky
It's just yours.
just as an example, that kooky pastor had horrible ideas, and it made you question your faith. If you looked around and no one else was talking, well, it must be you. Oh, I must be you now. With the internet, it isn't. You're not as stuck with your village church, and that's something I did cover a lot with Disobedient Women. Is as people in that book started to talk about abuse within their churches, and they saw what's happening here is happening here is happening here. Maybe there is something systemic going on. That same thing with disbelief. It gave people an opportunity and language to talk about what they were feeling. They weren't as isolated. That was such a long answer.
That's good. Yeah, thank you. You give me some chance to rest. So I'm sure Moscow knows nothing about a political faith whatsoever. But
let me tell you.
yeah, so as a Christian, and you as an agnostic, I think this is a helpful question. Which we're trying to engage in these conversations overall, where you can have discussions, you can have dialogue with people of different faiths, of different genders, whatever it may be, for the same purpose of getting together for the same purpose. And so, one of the questions and this is for me as a Christian, as somebody who formally pursued ordination and then decided to leave ordination because of the things that I saw. And I didn't want to be part of it, which hurt, but it's a bandage you have to rip off every once in a while. Is this something to where a pastor, a parishioner, whoever it may be, it's a theology. So if we can some people may say, if we can just change the theology up a little bit, then the church will get better, and then the women will stop leaving the church. Or we have to really focus on Jesus' message and what he says, what he taught, and then we'll keep the women in the churches. What's the relationship between the faith that they held, and if it does it get better? Do they stay in the church? If it doesn't get better, or is it they're leaving because they're leaving, and there's not much you can do about it?
So I'm not sure is part of my answer. Statistically, women are usually the ones in a heterosexual marriage as the heads of your family that train a child religiously. So if the moms aren't in the church, it's less likely their kids are going to grow up believing. So that's gonna be a factor in the future. You've lost, I think it's 16 million women in a decade. I'm not sure many of them are going to have kids who end up in church. Looking at the collapse of the mainline churches, those were not churches that were making big political statements. Some were slow to, United Methodist. I was raised United Methodist. They went through from the time I was in high school till now, this protracted disagreement over how to treat gay people. And I think witnessing that, I don't know if you've come back from that, but it's the polarization. I don't know if that's going to be healed. maybe talking about who Jesus actually is in the Gospels as written, maybe that'll help. Maybe not just focusing on Jesus. One of the things that did seem to keep pulling some of my sources back was engaging in activities with the community around you to help immigrants, or to stand up against racism, or to take these stands for human beings. That, I think, maybe if there is an answer to creating a stickiness with a congregation, is rooting yourself not in ideology, but more in the human beings around you who are hurting. And so reflecting on what people miss from the Jesus stories, but not necessarily like they don't need the stories told. They know the stories. They need the action.
So related to that, and I know you don't love these questions.
Oh, God.
The more, like you said, the more actionable, practical questions. And you're a reporter, so your thing is I need to report the facts as I see the facts, and it's hard to give people, hey, here's the action items that I want them to take. But when you see these, because this is what changed me when I've been running. I'm still running since Patriarchy, but when I first produced it, it really did color the way I saw the church. It really did color the way I saw pastors. It colored the way I saw the Christians. It caused me to question some stuff in myself and really dig deep into some of the stuff that I believe. Most of it, the core is still there, but some of the dross has been burned off a little bit. Whether that be cultural, societal, I'm not terribly sure. But if you can talk to two groups, both those inside the church who hear these statistics, and hopefully they're worried. Like we're losing people, but we're losing women. We're losing those who are, hopefully they think they're integral, crucial to our church. People who can serve, people who can lead, people who can whatever. And then also those who are outside the church, where they say like, well, of course this is happening in the church. Look at the terrible shape the church is in. So if you can talk to both of them, those who are inside the church, okay, Sarah, I get it. The statistics are bad. So what? Like, what is this just like the church is horrible and now we have to kind of flush down the tube? Or the other side is like, thank God the church is horrible, we get to flush it down the tube. So if you can talk to both groups, to the Christian who's hearing these statistics and saying, this is bad, what do I do? And for those outside saying, hey, I have friends in the church, what do I do?
Okay, and I'm gonna answer with like statistics because I'm not a therapist for pastors, and I would not pretend to be a counselor if I were not licensed.
Yeah. Shocking training. Yeah.
So okay, yeah, I have a couple of things that just sparked as you were talking. Truly. For those who are in the middle, and this isn't arrogant or far right folks, maybe some. Recently, there was a thing about PRRI, again, I'm not positive, survey Catholics and mainline Protestants who had left, and I asked why. And almost half said it was over the treatment of queer people. If you ask people 30 and under, it was 60%. So maybe don't be hateful to gay people and that's one. And then for those in the more extreme churches, yeah, you may be having your heyday now. I have interviewed so many kids who grew up being told there's one way to live. I'm your authority if you don't do what I say. They don't want your God. They don't want a God like that. And so, this one, I got the number. if you ask ex-evangelicals, 68% of them will say their parents were part of the reason they left. And more specifically, most of them say their parents' interest in the culture war, their fixation in the Outdoor war, their fixation on the culture war is why they left. So it may work now, but it's not even long-term program. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're in the church. As far as those who've left, I don't know that I need to console them. Like there are certainly some of my sources. I interviewed this woman who is a Catholic sex abuse survivor, and her story is wrenching. She was raped for years by a priest. She's in her 70s. She is actually suicidal today. I don't think it's good for her to go to church. I don't know what she needs. Help. She needs a financial settlement. That's what she needs. So it would be lovely. And those who are finding, there's this app, it's an astrology app. Channy is an astrologer. She's very progressive. Some people get a lot out of it. And you can do little activities like, you write what you're hoping for in the week. And it gives you something to feel positive about. If that helps, good. I don't know what to tell those who are out other than do what makes you safe.
Yeah. So some closing questions in our last few minutes before our break, before the Q&A. If you can talk to Moscow, so residents of Moscow, I know there's I know we counted, there's something like 10 states represented here. If they showed up, there's a few countries that are here. We're not terribly sure why they decided to show up, but they did. But a majority is Moscow. Something like 2/3, 3/4 of the tickets were sold to Moscow residents or redeemed by Moscow residents. So what we would call like ground zero for a lot of this stuff, we're looking at ground zero. People here have friends or themselves are part of these statistics. So if you can talk to them as those who've left it, those who are experiencing it, those who know, who want to leave it, but they're at a certain church that is rather difficult to leave, to put it very mildly. If you can talk to them.
And tell them what?
And tell, I'm not even sure, but and tell them, and not to give advice, but you're not the only one leaving, nor you're not the only one who's going through this. You're not the only one who's hurting. You're not the only one who's been hurt. You're not the only one, unfortunately, who will be hurt. If you can talk to them, whom like you said at the very beginning, I feel like this is only me. I'm the one who's the problem. Before the internet age, and even today, even part of the internet age, where they see the statistic and they say, that's great, but that's kind of ethereal, that's out there, but me, I'm hurting.
I think it's so hard. It is so hard. The folks I've talked to in this community and the folks at CREC churches around the country, so many of the same themes just come up over and over. I usually end up interviewing women and in the whole hierarchy of things that are, at the bottom. And I've talked to an alarming number of people who did feel that alone and who not only felt like if I leave, I'm going to hell, I'm leaving my marriage, I'm going to lose the custody of my children, and everyone's going to hate me. I don't even know who I am if I'm not here. I don't have a solution for that. But I can say is that brave people have done it. And they have had to weather it. And they have weathered something that no church should be subjecting any person to. But they're still standing, most, not all, most. And I don't know if there's a God, but I think for me, the model of human resilience is a wonder. And if you can look, if it's in a book, if it's on a podcast, if you can look to a person whose story is like your own and see there is a road, that I hope that helps. And just, if there is a God, I cannot imagine why that creator of the universe and so many beautiful things would want you to be tortured in your daily life. What kind of creation? If you're someone who does still believe, but consider what version of God you've been handed, and feel at your leisure to question it if it doesn't measure up. If you're told you're this small because God's so big, what is the nature of that big God? And how do you get there? Because this ain't it.
Awesome. I think we'll end it right there with that answer. I think that about sums up why we exist as Sons of Patriarchy. So she's saying, reaching out, we really are honest with you. Please reach out to us. We may not have the resources immediately, but we have people who can talk to you, who can help you. If you want to tell your friends, please do tell your friends. I can leave my contact info. I'm sure Sarah can leave her contact info. We can point you to people who can help. That's honestly why we exist as Sons of Patriarchy. Yes, we're sometimes a little brash, but we're also brash because somebody else is brash. We kind of have to beat them to it, which helps a little bit. But before we end out, a few things before we stop the live recording and go into the Q&A. Remember, the Q&A is at 5 p.m. and you're more than welcome to go hang out in the lobby in the concourse, get some concessions. I can't make solid promises, but because this went seemingly pretty well, everybody showed up, this is not our last time. We want we want to scare them. We want to scare them a little bit, and not in the way that they scare everybody else, but say, hey, you're not the only bullies in town, and we're the bully of the bullies. We make sure we're going to keep you in line. So we have that 15-minute intercession, and also it's not at 5, but at 6:30 is going to be the book signing at Cafe Artista.
After party.
Yes, after party. Yep. That'll be meet and greet. And honestly, from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of our team's heart, from the bottom of Sarah's heart, I can't thank you enough for sure. I really, truly thought two things would happen. Number one is we got 250 tickets and like 5 people were going to show up. Or two, I honestly thought, and I can't tell you how many questions we had about this, that a certain church that will not be named bought all the tickets. Which honestly tells you more about them than it does about us. For everybody in Moscow to think, well, of course you couldn't sell that many tickets. Of course Christ Church would try to steal those tickets from you, why is that church known for that? Instead of preaching about Jesus, but that's just me. So again, thank you for coming. Please stay until 5 for the Q&A. We'll see you then. All right, Moscow. Kenworthy. You can hear my voice, clap once. You can hear my voice, clap twice. Yeah, that worked way better than I thought it would. You guys are listening. Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for sticking with us. First of all, for staying here for the Q&A after the live recording. I hope it was not just interesting, but I hope it was helpful or actionable, or made sense of things that you guys were thinking of, or just included you in something. Because it can be hard, I'm assuming, being a Moscow resident, as it is anywhere else, and thinking, am I the only one who's fighting this? Am I the only one who's on my keyboard emailing a city rep, or the only one emailing a senator, or emailing a teacher, emailing a pastor? It can feel lonely, I'm assuming. And I gotta imagine it feels good to be with a lot of people who probably believe or feel some of the same things that you guys do. So thanks for coming. So thus starts our Q&A, and we're just a bit nervous about some of the questions that we might be asked. But actually, Sarah wanted to start off the Q&A. You guys can either answer this or not answer it, but we more or less want this to be percolating in your brain. So take it away.
Yeah, so part of this is me just being dodgy a little, because I'm used to asking questions, and I just had to answer a bunch of questions, and now I'm going to answer some more questions. But I feel like many of you probably noticed that CNN put out a piece that did not ask very hard-hitting questions yesterday. And in some ways, it's like, the eyes of America are now in Moscow.
CNN, if you're listening, contact us.
Do better. And I wonder what it's like. Like, you keep getting called an epicenter for Christian nationalism. What is that like? And what is it that told for you? I don't know if some of you, any of you, used to go to Christ Church. If it's just living neighbor to neighbor in a community and having that tension, I wonder what it's like for you. So, and as you know, I hold the mic and tell me your own specific story. But if part of that can inform, if you do want to share, or if you do have a question, it's just something that's on my mind, because it's more, you are more than a 6 minutes.
The only thing we ask is if you can keep your questions to 30 seconds to a minute, just so we can get through them. And if there is a lot, if there's not, we'll just sit here and stare at each other for the next hour. And if it's either hard of hearing or for the YouTube audience too, if I think I need to repeat it, I'll repeat it. That's not because I can't hear it. It's because I'm trying to help others who are either hard of hearing or they're away from it, so they can't hear the speaker. So, first question.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Julia Parker, and I am on Moscow City Council. So I wanted to talk about this dilemma that we have here in Moscow, is that we want to be a good, welcoming, kind community, and we want to have respect for our neighbors. At the same time, we want to fight this Christian nationalist church. So, like, anyone out there who has ideas or thoughts on how to balance those two things, I think that that's an issue in Moscow that we really get hung up on, because we are fundamentally good people. We want to help other people, but at the same time, we can't accept the way that Christ Church is trying to change our identity.
I'll shorten it, since she's basically asking how do we get along, but also how do we engage in these conversations with those who don't see the world in the same way we do. And I think I'll start off, and if you want to add to this as well, from a Christian perspective, I think it could be easy to like fight with them, fight the same way they do, which there's something to like the way that you approach the conversation and not being diminutive and being authoritative in approaching them. But it's up there. If we're not giving them an alternative, it's just stop doing what you're doing. And that's it. They're probably wondering, well then, what do I do with this energy? What do I do with this activism? What do I do with all the stuff that I want to do? My guess is just a very simple answer is like, give them alternatives. Like ways to push the energy that may not be where it's currently being pushed.
Let them go fishing.
That's right. They said let them go fishing.
So, I have a story actually coming out in the New Republic, so I don't want to spoil it. But there was a school board in Michigan that it caught my interest because, like, and it was on city council, but like many school boards in America, cultural wars came, showed up, they were loud. People were yelling, what are you doing? You're teaching CRT to our kids. You're putting masks on them during the pandemic. And that community was gobsmacked, like many communities. And there was this highly organized, very loud minority that overwhelmed, almost overwhelmed the school board. The school board stood firm, and the school board keeps, even in this national political climate, keeps pushing to include all of their children. And in the meantime, certain school board members have gotten far better at organizing with like local indivisible groups and issuing newsletters. And when there is an issue where someone may show up and bring a small angry crowd, they had a much larger civil crowd that eventually made it a little boring, I think, for the angry folks to show up. And things have reached an interesting equilibrium. So I think taking from that, organize. If you are dealing with a highly organized, loud minority, looking at just your election results, isn't there a minority? So make sure you're organized.
So, two things. First of all, I know the here. It's incredible to see you guys. And it's awesome to see the crowds here. It's so inspiring. I ran for office 2 years ago, and I'd like to give you the people who said my fund that I first told you. It says that I don't like it for the neighboring church. But my question for you guys, as a young political leader that wants to get into this, that wants to help push and drive, combats the state through this bigotry, what on the political side do you guys think we could be doing better as a community in Moscow or in general in the nation?
You go first.
I was going to say the same thing.
I don't know. It's kind of a mess right now. I think not giving up, like that's to me something I keep hearing little whispers of. We're in an overwhelming political moment. You turn on news, you open your phone. I was backstage for 15 minutes, there was another shooting. Kids are being picked up. Like, I think if you are a young person, you want to organize politically. And someone gave us this advice today. She just heard this. Pick your thing. Don't exhaust yourself by trying to do 7 things. Pick your thing. If you're really worried about ICE running over neighbors, find some of your other neighbors who can help. If you're really, really worried about Christian nationalism, I don't know, see if you can start a book study where you're getting folks to talk about some sort of religious dialogue where they're hearing from other people. I think thinking nationally, there's only so much you can do right now, but you're here. And you're in a place that's pretty relevant. So pick your thing and take care of yourself when you do it, but run at it and do as well as you can. It's a nice question.
Yeah. And I'm not a politician. I'm never running for political office. So kudos to you. No, never. Don't ask my wife. But maybe the only two things, as somebody who formerly was trying to become a pastor, a preacher, which should be farther away from a politician than it is, but is a lot closer than it should be. But I'd say the two things that I've learned, it's number one, I've learned to do this is listen. I'd imagine that's going to be pretty helpful as a politician. It's not just what you want them to do, it's what they want. And you can help along those lines. And it was sort of part of the last answer. It's give them a narrative, like give them a vision of the kind of society that you want to help them towards. Not just like, hey, here's this talking point, here's this thing, and here's this policy, because those help with one side of the brain. But helping with the whole brain, it's this is the kind of society I want us to flourish in. That's the kind of politician, and I'll lay my cards on the table. My favorite politician of all time is Barack Obama. I love his approach to speaking. I love his approach to politics. But what he did is he invited you into something bigger than him. And I'd imagine that helps on even a local level.
That is such a good answer. I'm going back. I want that answer. Because this moment we're living in, I think because it's so overwhelming, we're losing our political imagination. We're losing our ability to lay vision forward for an alternative to this hellscape. Yes, do exactly. Give them something better, and then figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
Peter, you should be a speechwriter.
All right. That's one.
Folks, again, thank you. My name is Andrew Charter, I'm a resident of Camp Hospital, a long time ago resident. The reason why I wanted to second something you said, and just tell a little story that also says, this is something that I feel resounding in what you said about how to help our community at large. I grew up in an evangelical situation. My grandfather owned a television station here in Louis for years. You may have seen it. I don't have it. But what I want to say is that when my family left that, my mom left first. My mother made the choice to stop being in church. She started getting education. And the thing that changed inside that, we lived in a patriarchal family. My grandfather was a patriarch. And when she changed her mind and said, I want something more for my family, I want my family to have an education, I don't have an education. She chased her thing. And her thing was, I have something more for me, I have something more for the folks to go and take care of. And the moment she did that, what changed was our family imploded. I don't have an extended family to this day because of that. I don't have a big family. I used to have a very large family. Now I have 4 people in my family. And there's a reason for that. There's good reasons for that. Because we were able to fight for what mattered to us. We were able to say education is something that does make us take. We're not being pushing to destruction of this can't be right? So you're right. You're entirely right. And the thing that kept me safe and that kept me from going into white national circles and doing all the things that we were so close to was the fact that there were other things, other visions that were larger than what we were being told. And so I just want to give more amplification to those messages because as I am alive today, that is the truth. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
I listened to the podcast and your work was amazing. And I guess it's a little bit repetitive, but in your book, there's a bit about Willow Creek Church in Chicago, and my sister is the head of the elder board. when all of the shit went down there. And when her story kind of came out and she got a one-on-one with me and we kind of hashed it out, I told her she was wrong and that those women should have been believed and that she shouldn't have given the power to the man at her church. And she did leave her church and she is still faithful, but I mean, I didn't grow up in a religious household. She married into a family that was very prominent in that church. So her faith is very subservient, and I lost my sister to it. I don't know why I'm telling you this, other than how it was shocking to read about her in her book. And to see us all part of my family and the loss that I've experienced in your story. It's a huge loss. You end up losing somebody to a church.
Yeah.
And I hope that there's a way to encourage things for women, to give them a place of welcome. And I mean, I would like to be that person for my sister, but she doesn't want that for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think I'm powerful enough for her to be attracted to anymore. Like, it's not interesting enough to her.
You'd be surprised.
What?
You'd be surprised that you're a lot more
I
powerful
was
than you
seeing
think.
in my family, and I did walk away from a lot of the patriarchy that was in my family, but she didn't. She's never created a different
Yep.
story. She's still living that story. But I think you've researched what that happened in that church, and it was a very prominent story nationally.
Yeah.
I mean, she was on the cover of the Chicago Tribune and the New York Times, and it was she taking the fall for this man. And that is a sad, sad shame that she has to carry, and it wasn't her story. She just gave her power to somebody else. And I don't know, I guess I'm telling you this to figure out how to bridge that for women, how to take their power back, how to give them the strength to leave a faith that has been obviously power-driven.
I mean, this is admittedly a dissatisfying answer. But I don't think you can give power to anyone. They have to claim it. It's very hard for women who have been told you were created less. And for like queer folks who hear in church over and over, you were created less. We were talking about this at dinner, I think, or lunch. Jet lag. One of the meals yesterday, we were talking about how when you're in it, there's often that one family member on the outside that you're told, oh, they're bad, or you know they're a feminist, or they're an atheist and talk to atheist alcohol, which if on their own, and I don't know if we'll get there, but if on your own, you start to recognize, oh, my world is crashing. And it may take years to feel the damage from what you've gone through. Often the person you reach for when you realize the people who were around you, who told you exactly who you had to be, are no longer safe. The person you reach out to is the one you were told is the bad one, because you realize they never hurt me. So I think it's just keeping the door open. And I'll say more, and then I've covered a lot of hard stories. The number of people who DM me about Moscow, and this is like not a your question, but it's related, and say, my sister, my cousin, my whatever, moved out there. Do you know anyone who can tell me if she's safe? It happens a lot. And I think each of those people who are asking represents someone who keeps reaching out, even though they're closed off, I'm not talking to you. They're willing to be the one who has their door slammed back shut. They keep creaking open with love to know if you're ready. I'm here. Do you have anything?
No, I'm gonna stick with that. If it's all right before he speaks, This is Nathan Wells. I don't know if you know him. He was on our podcast. And I just want you guys to give him a round of applause. Him and his wife are the greatest people. I'm sure all of you are great. But they are particularly fantastic. Him and his wife, Christiana. So if you ever see them, please just hug them. Sorry.
It's a bit overwhelming, but you said about the DMs and stuff, just brings power. It's just the condition of Christianity, Grace Church, and for us in the journey, deciding to go public and actually speak up. We're from a fairly conservative background, Christian church, and I wanted to ask you one question on the process of before going public. I met with them twice. When I mentioned your article, and actually your article was one of the things that kind of started us on that. And it was also Doug's response to your article is actually what really triggered, like, wait, no. And so, but one of the interesting things you asked, like, what's it like in Moscow? One of the things I hear a lot, and Doug himself, when I talk about your article, he immediately was like, lies, all lies. And it was the one thing that kind of got a little, worked up when I was talking with him. And I wondered what you would say to someone that would say that, like all those women that you interviewed, that you reported on, that it's lies. Like, how would you respond?
It's not.
It's not like I just find people on Reddit and what they told me. So reporting on trauma is a long process. To build trust with a source takes a very long time. People are telling you the most intimate, devastating thing that has ever happened to them. That isn't something people divulge easily. And I mean, I've been at this long enough. There are just certain things that I can see in a person who's having a trauma response. They will have a little detail catch in their mind. And they mentioned one not here, a different story like I just mentioned. As she was being raped, she noticed the floral print on the sofa because she was disassociating and she was feeling disturbed. There were these little trademarks of traumatic events. So there's part of that is something that takes time. It gives you time as you're building that rapport so that someone trusts you. You also start to just involuntarily fact check. If they tell you a story once, they tell you again, something changes. That is not the situation here. These are very consistent stories. Also, with the Vice article, like I had a number of records. Like this person has PTSD from sexual assault. Like they've had sex with one person, and it was her husband. Like there are these documents you need when you publish a story like this. Publications don't want to be sued, and especially in the blowback, like after Me Too and Church Too, there is a low interest in taking on stories like this. So you have to have everything buttoned up. So like that Vice story, it went through legal review. It went through fact check. My book went through legal review. It went through fact check. Like there are processes. If I just lied, I'd be poor. I wouldn't be still a reporter. And like it's just nonsense. So your answer was smoother. No, they're not lies.
I mean, I'll distinguish. I can't really generalize, and I've probably I'm not the organized one in Sons of Patriarchy. I'm the recorder and just publishing stuff. Sarah's laughing because she knows it's true. But I probably talked to, 150, 200 people who wanted to tell their stories. Very, very few of them were like excited when I pressed the record button. That's like the last place that they want to be.
Yeah.
It's not like, thank God we have this really public thing to tell them, because they know the second that goes live, their parents are going to hear it, their kids are going to hear it, their siblings are going to hear it, their church is going to hear it, the media is going to hear it, everybody else is going to hear it. And if that's you, are you really excited for the whole world to hear about what happened to you? It's not something you're like really excited to make public. And so when somebody says, hey, you're lying, you're like, no, I'm scared. I don't know what else to do.
And like the people, at least I'll say, and I think this counts for Sons of Patriarchy. The people coming forward with stories like this are not doing it for notoriety. In my case, like many do pseudonyms, have children under the custody issues. They're doing it because they're trying to save someone else. And that how they're willing to put themselves through to try to save someone else, to just brush that off, lies. I don't know what to do with that other than to say, you clearly have an lack of empathy. I know that's a scandalous word around here, but there is something broken in your sense of care for other human beings. If that is your response, if your response is not, even if you don't believe it, like if you think if that happened, we should review, we should look into this, we should do something to make sure that this doesn't happen. If you think it has not come out swinging and then take it on the victim and call them names.
Yep. Last little thing before he comes up, I want this to be on record and for everybody else to hear. I've had an open invite with Doug to talk, and he has had radio silence. He does not want to talk. So this is an open invite. If Doug's listening, if his Cornelius are listening, I want to talk to you. Publicly, I want to talk to you. I know this guy.
My name is Jeff Moss. I moved to Moscow 21 years ago from West Virginia to become part of Christ Church to study at Patriarchy, which is Christ Church's alternative seminary to train pastors for the CRC. Graduated from Great Friars Hall, Christ Church sent me as a missionary to Hungary. This one is the CRC church there, which worked apparently, it's still going today. And I was ordained and pastored in the CRC here in the United States. 10 years ago, 2015, over not being able to reconcile the picture of God that I saw in the Bible with the faith that I was supposed to represent as a pastor for the CRC, I ended up having to leave that position, leave the CRC. And so my question, it's mainly for Peter, but Sarah, if you'd like to comment, I'd love to hear it too. Your current work is mainly focused on women leaving the church, leaving Christianity, and those are stories that absolutely need to be told. My question for Peter is, what are the trends, what are the patterns you see among people who find that they have to deconstruct the version of Christianity that they've been part of, that they've been committed to, but still find Jesus compelling, and in fact are deconstructing that version of Christianity because it's inconsistent with what they believe to be true of God and true of Jesus, and they want to find a truer, fuller, more faithful version of Jesus, and they can only find it in a different church context. What are the factors that you see are helpful to people like that to find a different version of Christianity that rings true to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. hate if I'm embarrassing you, but he's on twice on Sons of Patriarchy. Please, 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 for the love of all good things, listen to his episode. It is amazing. You will understand Christ Church better than Christ Church can help you understand Christ Church, as well as other things that are nefarious there. So please get to know Jeff and his story and listen to those episodes as well. I can't say I have a very compelling answer. I can just say I have my answer for this stuff. I was telling Sarah too, she actually asked me more or less the same question 5 minutes before we started recording. I didn't go to church when we started this podcast. I didn't tell many people. I didn't make it rarely known. And I was going through some personal struggles. I was going through some marital struggles, personal struggles, and then all this compounded with hearing these stories. I both questioned the faith. I have to be honest, I never questioned Jesus. I have to be honest. I never questioned Jesus. And that's because I was pretty well trained in this stuff, which, to be honest, that's not the case for a lot of people. Well, they're not trained in this, and our friend Doug is not trained either. But more to the point, I was sitting with these stories for 6 months before we hit play on the podcast. And I was going to an Orthodox Presbyterian church, which is not the same as the CRC, but it's like kind of in the same ethos environment. It's a Reformed church. And I was hearing Bible studies. I was hearing like, this is interesting stuff, I guess. But I don't hear about the love of Jesus. I don't hear about the love of God. And not to say those should be cordoned off from anything, but those are relatively core to who Jesus is and who God is. But that's, I had to struggle with that. And I had to struggle. It honestly came down to, am I a preacher who loves the church? Or am I a person who loves the church? Am I only doing this because I get to tell people about Jesus? Or am I doing this because I want Jesus? I want his message. And I know that's not for everybody. Trust me, I know it's not for everybody. I know there's someone who's like, I don't want anything to do with Jesus. And I truly, trust me, I get it. I really do. But I was like, I'm a person who wants Jesus. And what does that mean? And so it wasn't like, okay, let me strip off all the stuff and look at the Bible for what it really is. It was like, let me look through it with this lens. Let me look at it through with this lens. And which one makes the most sense? And I can't say I've like found it, but I'm getting closer. Oh, I know you too.
Yes, you know me too. I'm Rachel Darnall. I will be on the upcoming episode.
Yep.
Next one. I'm from like an older version of Christian patriarchy than what's going on here. My family was involved with the Ladders ministry. I can read it already. So watching this happen is like watching my childhood on replay, basically. My question is, I'm here representing Women Presbyterian. Me and friends drove about an hour long. Should have been 5 hours, actually 6 hours. What can churches that are not in Moscow but are close enough to be relevant, how can we create support for people coming out of Moscow, especially people who want to stay in the faith and they're not ready to give up on Jesus, but they know something stinks.
I feel like that's a you.
I'll start off and you can add some of your statistics to it as well. Oh boy. I think, and we've heard that, I cannot tell you how many times we've heard this at Sons of Patriarchy. It's one bad church, or it's one bad denomination, or it's a few bad apples, but not the whole thing. And somebody, I forget who it was like, that analogy's horrific. Because if you have one bad apple, what the heck else happens to the orchard? Everything else gets bad. If you have somebody hurting in your church, if you have another church in your denomination that's hurting, and you were not doing anything, I won't say just as bad, because those who are perpetuating this is worse, because you're the one who are on the front lines doing to somebody personally. But to say it's to relinquish responsibility. To say, hey, that's one bad church, it's you like saying, well, they're on their own little corner over here, they're not very big. And they're only hurting their church. But I have a great pastor, or I have a great elder board. I was like, to be honest, your pastor is not that great if he knows this is happening over here. If your members know this is happening. And it's like, to be honest, it's just, you kind of have to be willing to get slandered. You kind of have to be willing to potentially lose your position. If you're a pastor, you kind of have to be willing to lose your ordination. You have to be willing to lose your congregation.
Where are the pastors of Mollis go?
That's a good question.
Do we have pastors from Mollis?
Actually, that's it. Do we have any pastors here? My guess is no. Maybe we do. Who knows? Maybe they're here. I can't see it, but I don't see any hands. But that's also a good question as well. Where are the pastors? So you kind of don't have a choice. You gotta join in, and if our theology means anything, it's got to mean something to those who are being hurt.
I don't know, I'm going to take this one thing, I don't know if this would help, but with Disobedient, when two different churches asked to either do an event or like offered to host a survivor. And so this thing that is not usually spoken about in church, but is breaking people within the church, was brought out. And those open conversations, as a non-believer, I mean, as, you know, people say, like, that's church. Like, that was healing for the survivor invited and for the for sure people in this church who suffered abuse.
Yeah, everyone's watching.
So if it's like we're in a country where there is Christian nationalism, we're going to talk about it. I don't know if that's like an old Sunday school or where you put it. I don't know what church it is. But I think taking the thing that's the taboo that everyone's thinking about, that is hurting, putting it out a little bit, that may help. And if it's something that you can do online to engage the folks here, maybe that's a way to be supportive. I'm guessing. Yes.
An opinion that I've heard from this fact is that a reason that organization has such a stronghold that they have, is that they're so competent with their money and buying real estate around town. And I'm wondering how true is that, and is it like an elephant in the room that we're ignoring? Is it a blind spot? What's your advice?
What do you all think?
Yeah, we're not Moscow residents.
This is something I've heard over and
Yeah.
over.
Buying land.
The things we have heard, and there's some stuff.
Nice.
We have heard, and I want to be careful because I don't know all the specifics, but it is not an elephant in the room, that they are buying up land. They are buying up businesses, whether or not it's like front facing, whether or not it's like, hey, we're Christchurch, we're buying this building, and this is like a really Christchurch affiliated thing. Some are, and some are, yeah, like you said, some it's in the background. And for those who haven't followed it, there's a Facebook page, the Christchurch Affiliates. If you go to Christchurch Affiliates, you'll see a list of the Christchurch owned or operated or majority. That's where I would go first, is go to Christchurch Affiliates. It's affiliates of Christchurch or business affiliates of Christchurch, but it's not an elephant in the room. It's very real.
Someone just handed Peter a brochure, Moscow Community Investment Co-op. I have not even read this brochure, but it's on my hands. And if that may be something to look at. Yeah. So do I.
So as a Moscow resident, we interact, of course, with Christchurch daily, and it's a whole range. How, if you have suggestions for both Christians and non-Christians, how can we encourage conversation with our neighbors who are Christchurch associated, but who are more on the fringes, and they're, as I've been told, they're just trying to do the best for their family that they see. But how can we encourage steering the conversations to both in a non-Christian and Christian sphere of this is not actually a healthy means, or a healthy community that you're in?
Do you want to start?
I'll give a stab at it. Maybe this relates to an earlier question, both the political question and then also how do we have conversations with those who, and they were saying more within Christchurch. But on the fringes, I think maybe we sometimes overthink it and say we have to have a, I don't know, special get together, or we have to have Sons of Patriarchy in Moscow to do something about it. But I think what is Christchurch, and this is me putting them in their best light, not me agreeing with them. So let me preface it. The thing I always hear about them is they're community oriented. They have all sorts of events. They have potlucks. They have Sabbath dinners. They have things that like people know people inside really well. And to be honest, as a human, how much do you want to know other humans? How much do you want to be part of a community, of a tribe? It's hard being on your own. It's when you're offered this from Christchurch, it's tremendously compelling. Where you're with family, with friends, with those who you may not decide to be friends with off the side of the road. I think it's offering that. I think it's offering not like, hey, we're a community against Christchurch, and we're going to tell you all this stuff. That there is definitely room for that. Definitely room for that. But it's just it's I know it sounds weird. It's like kind of doing what they're doing, but doing it better. It's being a community, being around them, being friends with them, going out with them, having dinners with them. And when they see that and they know you don't have an agenda behind it, I think that's more compelling than not.
Hi, thank you for being here. Well, Sarah, thank you for your question. I don't want to speak for the community, but I'm sixth generation here on Blues, and I think I've had the privilege of, and was raised, Catholic Christian families, and I think we spoke to this earlier, but like a more sort of relational, like community-centered version. I don't think a week went by where my grandma wasn't making funeral potatoes or crocheting Afghans for not just people in the church, but a community member at large. And so I think I've been lucky enough to see a lot of folks are grappling with like this concept, right? Like this has been sort of coming, and I think that while it can be like, I'm sure we all like experience a lot of fear, anger, sadness, and frustration. I think Moscow is a really incredible community that's very passionate about our community. I think it's a very intergenerational community, which I think is a tremendous strength in figuring out what to do about something like this. And I remember my grandmother at one point said, and I think the late ecologist Joanna Macy echoed this when somebody asked her about kind of the burden of living in these times, and so maybe kind of the burden or responsibility of being in a community like this. And both my grandma and Joanna Macy reframed it as like an opportunity and kind of a privilege to be in a position to do good and make change. And I think that somewhat relates to my question, which is maybe mostly for Sarah. We're obviously ground zero for this.
and the rise of some Christian nationalism, but particularly in relation to your work, that also has made us ground zero for people leaving the church. And so I wonder, like, yes, how do we fight that? How do we make, the church's life as miserable as possible? But I also wonder, given what you know about why, women in particular, or maybe just in general, people leave the church, or why maybe they don't, if they've thought about it. What can we as a community do to support the people who are leaving, who have thought about leaving? What can we do? And I think maybe you spoke to this about like community and the support systems are a big one, but I guess if you, from your research, like, and having been in this community as well, like, how can we as a community be conducive and be a really good support system and network for those people who are thinking about leaving or who have left?
Yeah. So with the thinking about leaving, I think Peter gave a good answer, like be a community. The only thing I would add is my suspicion from the women I've interviewed who left Christchurch, those women are exhausted. So another opportunity is if it's your neighbor, like, hey, I'll take the kids, not for any reason to like deconvert them or whatever, just show like, hey, I'm a normal person who can help you because you don't have help. I think that's one thing. As for helping those who are leaving, and especially in a place where there's a lot of you, I wrote a story for the New Republic a couple of months ago. The headline was kind of quirky. It was like, they've left the church and now they're witches. Real witches. And right now I'm blanking on the journal article. It was like wrapped around a journal article that studied people who left the church and were finding out other ways to be spiritual. And the sociologist who I interviewed said, like, some of the questions I get on this are, is it just the times? We're bullying alone. Like, people used to have, even if it wasn't the church, and community groups that they were a part of. They were in a bowling league, they were in Knights of Columbus, whatever. You had these other communities that you were invested in. You were not sitting at home doom scrolling. And people keep asking, is that just part of what's happening? Are people just leaving all sorts of communities? Aren't they alone? And so I was talking to him about that, and he said, people ask that, and they don't realize how many of these people were lonely when they were in the church. And I don't know if that's advice, but I think having that knowledge that there is an isolation when you don't fit. And then when you are heartbroken enough, you have to leave. It can be pretty lonely too. And I don't know about your local witch communities like, or they're too far. But like the varieties of spirituality that also exist in Moscow, I'd protect those folks. Because I bet, they can meet resistance out on the street. I don't know if that's a decent answer or not.
I'll stick with that.
Okay.
That's good.
Since it first started, and I don't know how it was suggested to me on YouTube. I think because I've been kind of following the whole Moscow Blue rabbit trail for years and years, and it's super interesting to me. It's just so anyway. First, I want to raise a glass to some patriarchy. So ties the group together. Anyway, so and I mean I didn't really grow up here, and I made that choice when I was about 18 to become a Christian. So I had definitely a different experience, like definitely trauma from other stuff. Yeah. And just, but even then, coming into it late, like even experiencing trauma from that period culture stuff, the Josh Harris book.
Yeah.
I mean, at that age, I hadn't even kissed baby clothes. I was like, yeah, like every part that you can think of. But yeah, so I just want to say, like, also, I love the work that like Mark Layton is doing with South Weather Valley, these interviews. One time when Chris Roseborough interviewed Carrie Ferguson, the lady who had that horrible traumatic experience with the Hillsong Australia pastors. I mean, just to have those voices given have those people given airtime, that they matter, and it's just been really beautiful to see that with this podcast. It's been awesome. So, and it's weird that I have kind of strange ties to like a lot of this stuff. Like Facebook or something I'm friends with like chicken pants. Ew. I'm sorry. But yeah, and when I have something funny, so when Doug Wilson says like women are designed to make sandwiches, right? My mom sent me a clip of that. Weird. And I'm like, okay, so here's the thing, right? I have an acting degree, so when actors try to, cook things, I'm 47 and I still like, burn it. So, and my husband, right, he's just, okay, I have tried to make the tuna fish sandwich he makes. Like, I have looked at the list of ingredients, I cannot make it. It's good as well as he can. So it'd be funny to like have a, sandwich making contest maybe with
This is a community event.
That's a good idea. That's your next event, Moscow. Sandwich making community. Yeah, sandwich making.
Make the sandwich.
I like it.
Try to like make better sandwiches than like the men. Probably both of the men. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. We don't have to see it. That might be a mistake because I can't make it. So.
Yes, yeah, evidently you're at the election.
And I'm not lie, all of this has been pretty overwhelming, so I'm not from here, so how do you
Never mind.
I grew up very conservative, evangelical, controversy, lots of faith, John Carter.
Can you get closer to
Yeah.
the mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
To briefly restate that, I grew up very conservative, Christian, evangelical, all that stuff you're familiar with. And I live about an hour and a half away from here, and I'm virtually alone in the Disobedient church out there. I do have some relatives that are supportive, they live probably within the out of state. So first of all, very cool to see so many people like actually talking about stuff that's been in my head for so long, and I didn't realize it was such a thing. So, thank you for that. Secondly, I had a lot of questions, I'll try to keep this succinct. But what I decided for myself that the meeting was worth it as difficult and costly as it was for me. But that is a question that I hear a lot or see a lot from other women who do finally start to question leaving. They're like, I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna get kicked out of my house, I'm gonna lose my kids, like you mentioned, I'm gonna lose all these things. And I guess one of my questions is, in all your interviews and talking to these women, do you find a lot of them coming to the same conclusion that the trauma, like confronting the trauma and starting on my own, losing my entire community, it is worth it? How many of you find going back?
Back to faith.
Yeah,
Or
church back to faith. I know for me, I decided not to because I was like, I'm alone now. I'm abandoned now. That would just become like more abandonment. So it wasn't abandoned. Either. So,
I mean, I would say, I don't know, I do not have a hard number. It is highly unusual if you go through losing that much. And the church weaponized the threat of losing that much to want to associate with the church. So I think that's very unusual. I am thinking of one of the women, actually in the first book, Vicky Garrison, who was like at her end, she had way too many babies. She was having like reproductive issues and kept having babies because that was her goal from God. And you know, like you see a friend in a similar situation who thinks, well, my kids will be better off without me. Like, I think when that's the choice you're confronted with, I hope you see yourself. And I don't think I'm adequately answering, but I hope you save yourself. And if you can bring your faith along with you or find a way back to it, then good. But I hope it's a version of that faith that does not enclose you in a new trap. And I hope you're able to learn from the escape. Yes.
And just one more thing, it was a question that kind of got answered already, but I was looking was like, how do you talk to people who are still in that, or thinking about leaving, or maybe not thinking about leaving. I tried to still honor him, and that's still in the church. And that looked quite a bit of aggression, and maybe to talk to me. But I just wanted, first wanted how I approach that, how to do that. We talked about that, and I just wanted, and I realized my experience, there were little lights through my whole childhood that people saw, and maybe some of them should have been more aggressive and stuff against after seeing abuse, but most of them didn't know it was a religious freedom, how that needs to be protected. And without going into that, I just wanted to put out there that the people that did, the estranged atheist uncle or whatever that sent me the necklace, the person that sent me the email, or the other one that said, hey, you sound depressed, depression was a sin, right? The grandpa that constantly was like, why aren't you in school? Why aren't you in school? And, my parents would lose their minds. And, and I would join in with that and act just as aggressively against that. And yet those were little lights that ended up being my lifeline for escape in the end. So if you're at regression, just know it's not me.
We have time for one more question. I know there's more questions, and I know you guys want to ask them. We do have to be out of here pretty soon.
Just come over.
And we'll be over at Cafe Artista, so feel free to ask more questions. So last question of the night.
My name is Melanie, and I listen to some podcasts that they make me really sad, and so then I have to turn it off because it's like overwhelmingly sad. But I was hesitant to raise my hand and ask if there are any pastors in the room, but I've been able to our Christian church, we have volunteer positions, and so I've been able to sit in councils and we have about 5 congregations in Layton County. And we have talked about this situation before, and it's hard to strike a balance between not being politically involved because we want people to make their own choices, but also protecting the community. And so as I've been listening to this amazing evening, I've been thinking, what is the action item that we can take? What can I walk away with and make this better? And I think that if all of us, no matter what our beliefs, what our groups and organizations that we're in, if you can tell your leaders, hey, we want to get together with other congregations and other organizations. And so that when the other organizations reach out, the answer is yes. Because we did try to reach out to a couple of different churches and they didn't want to hang out. We're not going to hurt anyone, like, let's just hang out, right? Let's just be together and be happy in each other's beliefs and the beauty that is Moscow because of its diversity. And so I just want to put that out there, like, tell your people, and then we can get together and we can be stronger together. And then my question to you is that, like, I find myself in a very spot with this whole conversation because, I do like devout Christian church goer every Sunday, but like I can see that that's really some of the like way extreme side that I find myself more in the middle, and politically I'm conservative. And it feels like sometimes I need to be liberal to fit in with this conversation, but politically I'm conservative. So where is there room for someone like me? Because like I know there is, but I'm like if I don't vote, okay, I'm a Republican. So I walked in the vote in the last election, and I was like, pass another Republican votes. And I saw, because I work with some of them, the voting block of Christ Church walked in to vote together. And like, I knew for probably like the presidential race, we probably voted for the same person, right? But then locally, it's very different. I don't want their candidate to be my candidate, so what can I do? I don't really want to run for office either, so I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one solution.
I'll answer this while you think. First, I want to say thank you if you're a liberal conservative for not booing if somebody says I'm conservative or somebody says I'm liberal progressive, for not booing for liberal progressives. Because to be honest, that's how Christ Church grows. Is there's Christ Church, and there's everybody else, and they fight against each other. And then Christ Church is like, we're just on our own way, doing our own thing. And I know there's fighting that happens with everybody else in them. But thank you for not booing. Thank you for, yeah. But that's, and it takes a lot of courage to say that where it may not be accepted. But I think that's what you guys can learn even from her coming up, is whether you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, black, white, whatever it is, this is a fight you guys can get together. And that's kind of why we exist. That's why we intentionally, even though I took a political stand, on the podcast, we don't take a hard political stand. We don't say like, you got to do this. Because we're trying to bring everybody together in this fight. And I think that's the way that you do it. So if a church, if you're a progressive church and a conservative church comes calling, please say yes. If you're a conservative church and a progressive church is calling, please say yes. If you're an atheist organization and a very conservative church is asking, please say yes. If you're a church and an atheist organization is calling, please say yes. So just say yes to everybody and then grow together.
So back in the old days, when Twitter was Twitter, not what it is now, a lot of the stories I wrote about the church and people's experiences and purity culture and all these things, I loved the comments because it was one of the few places, even way back then, where I would see a liberal and a conservative and whatever all say, yeah, this, I get this. And then they talk. And I don't want to call it an opportunity because that's not what it is. But there is a space where disagreements on faith or disagreements on political choices for a specific election don't matter as much as the problem you're dealing with right now. And for me, like, as I'm chopping up my book and taping it back together, the thing I keep thinking about is like, this is about American women leaving the church. But it's also a book about politics, which I didn't think it would be. And it's a book about America. And yeah, maybe we're not in Bowling Leagues and maybe we're not in all these other organizations. But I want to believe there's some core thing that still binds us. Whether that's our sense of rights or liberty or human freedom, the value of the people around you, however you are coding that according to your faith, your politics, or these other worldviews. I hope that thing can still keep us together. Because if we let these other forces take that away, then we're lost. And I think as you confront Christian nationalism, maybe one of the ways of flipping on its head is to offer that imagination of like, here's what it means to be an American in a pluralistic society, in a pluralistic community, and go there. I think that's what I hope can happen. And I hope here and I hope as a country we can get there.
So 3 things before you leave. If you want to come to Cafe Artista, it's that way somewhere. I'm not from Moscow, but it's over there. So if you call, somebody says, you put it over there.
No. Oh,
I saw one person put it. Okay, good.
All pointing
I was
different directions.
Good. All right. So head this way, and you'll hit Cafe Artista.
Or someone will say no.
Yeah, or someone will say no. But before you go there, there's a few things. Outreach Idaho, I do want to make sure that those who are looking for help, looking for resources, or know somebody who's looking for help and looking for resources, that's literally what it's for. It's for those who are looking for help. We have a good amount of people who are intake. We have an intake team. There are people there. It's not just a website. It's not just an organization. It's not just a nonprofit. There are people there, and they will respond to you. We'll do better at responding to you, but there are people who are there who will respond to you. Also, a reminder, please wear your shirts as much as you can, as often, and maybe like tomorrow. I know tomorrow's a big day for Grace Agenda, so wear it all day, and just let them know. And lastly, honestly, and I said this after live recording, and I'm sure I speak for Sarah as well, it means the world to us that you guys showed up, and
Yes.
hopefully we mean something to you. And just please know this, like I said, I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know where. It's gonna have to be at a bigger venue, but we'll come back and we'll do this again.